Okay, well, we are here today with Don and Becky Nordlund. We're in Whitehall, and this interview is part of the White Lake Environmental History Project. And first, I'd like to check and ask if you both have read and signed the legal release.
Yes, we have.
Okay, thank you very much. And would like to start with just getting an idea of your family history in the White Lake area. Just why are you here? How did you happen to be here? And do you have other family members here?
Do you want to go first?
No, I think we should start with you because
I was born and raised here. Born in Muskegon. Lived on Division Street. When I was born, I lived on Livingston Street. Then we moved to Montague, and I started school in Montague, went to second grade, and moved back to Whitehall, and lived in 3 different homes in Whitehall with my parents. Went to Fair State, got my BS in pharmacy. Came back, bought Pitkin Drugstore, 1959, 1960. Been there ever since. And married in 62. Now I'll let my wife tell where she's from.
Well, I was born in Alabama and lived in a couple of places. My father was a minister, so we traveled around and lived a couple of places in Pennsylvania. And then Dad says we're going to be, and we'd traveled to California, we'd traveled to Minnesota, so we knew a lot of the states. We went that Route 66, and when he said we're going to move to Michigan, I'm going, where is Michigan? Because we had never traveled through Michigan. And when we came up here, he showed us Duck Lake and Lake Michigan, and we were in. We said, this is where we want to be. And we lived out in the country, corner of Duck Lake Road and Weber. And then...
about when did you...
I was a junior in high school.
Oh, okay.
I was junior in high school. And then I went to Chicago, nurses training in Chicago at Swedish Covenant Hospital, and worked there I was there for 5 years. And started dating Don in the meantime. He graduated a year ahead of me in school. And came back and got married in 1962. And I started working at Pitkins, obviously. Gave up nursing. No, I did work as an RN in Muskegon for Dr. Kranz. But then after I started having children, I did start the gift shop at Pitkins. And you know the story.
I do know the story.
We did not date in high school.
No?
Nope.
No, we met at the Montague Carnival on Welsh Road. Well, that's when we started chatting with each other.
Oh, it sounds like a long love affair. What?
Yeah, it was. 6 years.
Can you talk just a little bit about owning one of the area's most historical businesses? What would you like to say about that?
Well, we've seen a lot of change, and we've made a lot of changes. And it's always for the betterment of, we felt, the community. And I'm sure they felt the same way when we made improvements. Tried to expand and handle the needs of the community. It's a lot different back when we started than it is now, obviously. I don't get calls at 3 in the morning to go get medication anymore, which I did quite a bit.
But you're willing to do it.
I'm willing to do it, but anyway, Becky, anything to add to that?
Well, how long has Pitkins been operating as a drugstore?
1882.
Okay, so for quite a long time.
Maybe it's 131 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 131 years. And we hope it continues.
Well, you've had it for a good portion of that time. For about a third or so.
I started with Stockboy in 1953.
What would you be able to describe some of your earliest memories of White Lake? Maybe as a child or a teenager?
Earliest memories were, it was always fun. Probably going fishing with my dad, and then boating, and just enjoying the water. And it was a beautiful lake.
What about you, Becky?
I didn't know anything really about White Lake. I didn't spend time in White Lake because we lived obviously closer to Duck Lake. But when we first were married, we rented a home on White Lake, and that's when we fell in love. but the water was very, very low at that time.
Oh, like it is
The
now.
lower, I think, than it is right now. And we had to walk out to the boat to get into the boat. And we lived there for a year, and we always wanted to go back.
Was that in the mid-60s, maybe?
That was 1962 to 63.
We lived there a year, and then we bought the house on Alice Street.
And then moved to a country club, where we are.
Okay.
46 years we've been here.
What, when did you become aware that White Lake had pollution issues? Do you remember that, or problems?
Well, first we knew was actually when Wint Dahlstrom started his, telling everybody to be aware of this, be aware of that. And we would listen, but I'm not sure, when we'd ask friends of ours and this type of thing, and they assured everything, was under control. And we didn't know at the time, way back when, that there was a problem, but now we do.
So you had friends that were maybe management or workers in the companies?
Absolutely. Social friends, golfing friends. Fact is, if it wasn't for DuPont and Hooker, they all live in this area. Pinecrest division over here was built by a lot of the execs that lived there. Where nowadays, like with Howmet people, they live in North Muskegon. They don't, and these people that lived here supported the community, supported the stores, was on school boards, was on city. They all lived in the area.
So it was, many of the people we've talked to already have said it was certainly a real positive
It was.
thing when the companies announced their opening and some of the,
I was not here at that time.
Yeah, we felt, it was good for the economics of the area, and it would all be good. As long as they, stayed under the government controls, which they assured us they were.
Well, and I'm not sure that people even really thought a whole lot about pollution.
I think it started when we first started hearing about Love Canal.
Which was in the late 70s, maybe?
I think so. That's when we really got extra concerned.
Did you remember, now, it seems like the tannery was the focus at first, with the causing the weediness, and then the city of Whitehall's sewage plant, and that seemed to be the initial focus, and then in the 70s it was more Hooker Chemical.
Then it was Hooker.
Well, Don, you worked at the tannery during the
I
summers,
did during
and you know
college 1 year.
all about all the
I
sludge
know a lot of
and all
that. My dad worked there 33 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
And
what was his experience, do you remember?
He was on the third floor of the tannery. He was in the finishing department, so he really didn't see where the hides were.
He would mention. He would mention that he was concerned.
My mother would make him put his clothes out in the garage before he came in.
Because of the chemicals.
Well, not the chemicals.
On the
the
hides.
stink.
The odor, maybe?
The odor, yes.
Well, and I think most people who lived in the area could identify the odor, in certain, when the wind blew a certain way.
Well, that happened with Hooker, too.
Yeah.
You could smell that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we lived here, we had two particular friends who were in our neighborhood. They were close friends of ours. And we had a couple of instances, I probably shouldn't even tell about them, but they were terrified. They told about us, the incident afterwards, and assured us that they were scared too.
They worked at the company?
Yes.
They were in charge of, I won't.
And so something happened that bothered them?
Yes. One of the chemical trains had to be taken out of town, and he diffused it. And
Well, and you don't need to name names.
No, we're not going to.
And he assured us, and one evening there was just lots of chemical smells coming in our neighborhood. And so we called one of them immediately, one of our friends immediately, and yes, there were emissions or something that they did at nighttime. And we were concerned, but we trusted them, and they assured us that it was safe. They lived here also, and so we kind of...
Well, you trusted them.
We trusted them.
Did they encourage you to go in the house and close the windows or anything, or take any action?
I don't remember that, but we did.
We did do that,
We
but I don't
tried.
remember if they told us to.
Did anybody else mention that at all?
We have heard accounts of odors from Hooker Chemical Company in particular, and then also times when there were either chemical leaks or releases from the air, from both DuPont and Hooker Chemical. And people also mentioned a time when a number of the trees over in Montague were damaged by a chemical released to the
I do
air.
remember that now you say it. And I don't know what year that was, but
No, I can't remember it.
but we were assured, and then we started listening to Wint a little bit more.
Well, was it awkward being a business person and interacting with people who worked at these companies, and then the concerns start coming up?
It was. It was.
But they were all our customers.
Yeah.
And that was.
And I'm sure that they
believed
were
them.
We didn't know who to believe, really.
good people,
Oh, very good.
you know, that you knew well and trusted. And
College graduates, execs.
besides the people kind of privately talking about concerns, when the news started hitting the media, the papers and things, was this a topic of conversation, or was it something that just wasn't talked about in certain circles?
It wasn't really talked about because usually you get together in groups and they aren't going to bring it up in a group.
Yeah. How did you start interacting with Wint?
Just he would circulate things.
He'd come in the store.
He'd come in the store and say, you got to get behind this, this type of thing.
Did he give out information?
Yes.
Yeah. I've also,
Tons of
I think he did a lot of
information.
good. As you are doing a lot of good, Tanya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did he bring his famous jars of things to smell?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think was the overall reaction to people like Wint, and then Bob Wesley too?
I don't know how to say this.
Well, I mean, he certainly had a strong personality.
He's very, very strong.
Well, we don't want to say something about him, but
No.
but somebody who goes over and overboard, or I don't know how to say it, but
Well, maybe some people thought he was maybe a little extreme
extreme. I guess that's a
Eccentric,
good
maybe?
or eccentric.
good term to use. Yeah.
And not in a,
But we said go for it. Yeah, go.
Yeah.
We supported
I
him.
mean, facts are facts.
So you were eventually convinced that something
yes.
really was going on.
Oh yes.
Yes.
And you think the turning
It took
point?
a while.
Yeah. Do you remember seeing anything in White Lake in particular that concerned you? Any visible effects or changes to the lake?
We didn't spend much time on the
No.
lake because we were busy working
and
all
we
the
were
time
here.
during
We
the
weren't on
summer.
the water at the time.
We didn't spend time on
We
the lake.
heard, but we didn't see.
We're not boaters. But
Well, then there was the scare of the fish, we couldn't eat the fish and this type of thing.
we did not eat the fish.
And we did not.
And I recall there was a little back and forth with that. They were
Mhm.
safe and then not safe and then safe, and it was maybe a little confusing time. What was your understanding of the pollution problem? Did you understand what was going on?
I don't think we did fully. We understood part of it, but we didn't dive into, we were just too busy to even get into it. Because at that time, we were working tons. She'd have to keep the kids up. We were open till 10 o'clock. She had to keep the kids up to, well, it was D mainly, so I could see her.
When how were you concerned at all about the area's image when the pollution concerns were raised? I mean, was it something because the
Very
area
much.
is a tourist area.
Yeah, we were concerned that people would stay away because of
I don't
All
know
this
if it
spring.
did anything. I'm just wondering, did the tourists stay away because of it? I mean, I don't remember. I truly don't
I
remember.
mean, we had a lot of tourists back, in the
More than what we
'70s,
have
more than we
now.
do now.
Did any of them ask questions about, or ask you in particular about the concerns, or mention them to you?
Very few. I might have had a couple comments.
I think it's something that was just going on in every community at that time, that people weren't.
Well, and the times
That
were different,
concern.
certainly. We didn't have the internet.
They didn't
It's
have
true,
what?
we didn't have the internet,
Yeah, oh, that's true.
Facebook, texting.
So maybe it was not as,
It was kept underground. I don't know.
what, did you take any action at all during that time? I know there were some local protests, and some people, had some specific concerns and did some letter writing.
Being an owner downtown like that, we try to, unfortunately, we do try to stay out of the pros and cons strongly, because you always hurt somebody. That's probably wrong in our,
We could personally feel different, but business-wise,
fighting.
we could not put our name out there.
Mhm.
Oh, and it is a small town.
Mhm. And they are customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were very important customers.
What,
All the employees.
what did you think about local community leaders during that time, as far as like city leaders, or, as far as what they did or didn't do?
Are you talking about city, Montague City, Whitehall City?
Yeah, local elected
Local.
officials.
I don't know, we would just believe what they told us,
Yeah.
and hopefully that they had a handle on it.
I think personally that the city was very puzzled as to what to do
With the tannery, for example?
with the tannery and with Montague's
Montague with Hooker
chemical
and DuPont.
plants. I don't really recall everything.
Well, and they were
But-
complicated issues, too.
They were very strong issues. And we needed them. We needed the
You needed
the
the job.
taxes that came from those places, unfortunately.
What was your viewpoint of government, like maybe state or federal government, and especially as things came to a head? I mean, did they do enough or not too much?
I didn't think, they did not do enough. I don't think the cities got the help from federal government they should have,
Or maybe state government.
or state government, yeah.
Did you have a difficult time at times deciding who to believe? I mean, there was probably a lot of information out there.
We definitely did. We hear every side, and they were all strong in their views.
Until our friends over in Montague could not drink the water.
Yeah, then we really
That became,
So you had friends in the Montague area?
Oh, yes.
Who had contaminated
Blueberry
water.
Ridge area.
Okay. And we've interviewed them, some of them also.
mhm.
What were your concerns about the pollution? Did you have any
Well-
specific concerns about how it might affect you or your family or the community?
Very
There were-
much so. I did not allow the children to swim in the lake at that time.
Yeah, when that all came
So
out.
we were concerned for our immediate family.
And there was issues, I think, talked about. They said there was more lupus in the area than other areas, and birth defects, this type of thing, which I don't know if proved true or not, but there was that
Well,
thought.
they're still,
Yeah.
checking on the cancer thing.
Yeah, well, we haven't really had any definitive, and it becomes a challenge the longer the time
Mhm.
period is, being able to determine who was exposed to what and what might be directly connected. What did you think of the local protests about pollution? Because at certain times there were some pretty vociferous protests.
Yes, there were.
We privately supported them.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of White Lake's health at this time?
I think it's coming back.
I allow my children to swim.
Yeah.
And my grandchildren.
They do all kinds of behind the boat stuff, skiing.
It's still so
or-
weedy, I don't know why
Yeah,
that is.
by August though, the weeds are just terrible.
Well, and the challenge was that there was some of the pollution caused excess weediness,
Mhm.
in the 60s and
It'd be wonderful if the whole bottom could be cleaned up.
well, and then the other part of that is that
Nature will take care.
some of the invasive weedy plants got in the lake,
Mm.
so kind of a combination.
Okay.
Although
You know about those things.
just a little bit, but part of the challenge too is that a certain amount of weeds is good for the fishery.
Yeah.
Fishery, yeah.
So it's kind of a balancing act.
Mhm.
But what changes do you see for the White Lake area in the future?
It's kind of a loaded question, isn't it? Especially with
Well-
all this new stuff coming up.
With
Well-
the Walmart?
Yep.
Well, and actually I developed the questions before that came up. But just, what do you think the area is going to, is it going to continue to develop
Oh,
or stay the
definitely.
same?
It'll
or-
develop. I don't think the population's gonna get a lot more outlining, possibly, city, no.
It's interesting to listen to other people when we tell them we are from Whitehall. They'll say, "What a beautiful community." Our dream is to someday live in a community just like that.
Oh, you had
So it is.
one here yesterday, he's selling you sweatshirts, just loves the area.
Oh yes, they're going to be running out
Out by the
on
Rooster.
Lake
on
Michigan
Lake
by the
Michigan.
Rooster. They love this community.
What do you think might be important for, future environmental protection for the lake? What are some things that might need to happen?
I think the government's much more involved, which helps
They have better
at the local
regulations.
level and the state level. Don't you think, Tanya?
I would agree with
Yeah,
that.
the regs are a lot better.
So that
Possibly back
that's a good
in
thing.
when we had into the problem, they didn't have those regs and they got away with dumping whatever they wanted.
Do you think that we've learned some lessons?
I hope so.
we have to again trust that we have.
Is there anything you would like to add that I haven't asked?
Keep up the good work.
Right, just
Well, thank you very much.
keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we will support you. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Lake and Lake Michigan, and we said this is where we want to be, and we lived out in the country, corner of Duck Lake Road and Weber, and then
About when did you?
I was a
how old
junior
were
in
you?
high school.
Oh, okay.
I was a junior in high school, and then I went to Chicago, nurses training in Chicago at Swedish Covenant Hospital, and worked there I was there for 5 years, and started dating Don in the meantime. He graduated a year ahead of me in school, and came back and got married in 1962. And I started working at Pitkins, obviously. Gave up nursing. No, I did work as an RN in Muskegon for Dr. Kranz. But then after I started having children, I did start the gift shop at Pitkins, and you know the story.
I do
The
know
rest
the
of that.
story.
We did not date in high school.
No.
Nope.
Okay, well, we are here today with Don and Becky Nordlund. We're in Whitehall, and this interview is part of the White Lake Environmental History Project. And first, I'd like to check and ask if you both have read and signed the legal release.
Yes, we
Yes,
have.
we have.
Okay, thank you very much. And would like to start with just getting an idea of your family history in the White Lake area. Just why are you here? How did you happen to be here? And do you have other family members here?
Do Do you want to go first?
No, I think we should start with you because
I was born and
you're
raised here. Born in Muskegon. Lived on Division Street. Actually, when I was born, I lived on Livingston Street. Then we moved to Montague, and I started school in Montague, went to second grade, which I did quite a bit.
But you're willing to do it.
I'm willing to do it, but anyway, Becky, anything to add to that?
Well, how long has Pitkins been operating as a drugstore?
1882.
Okay, so for quite a long time.
Maybe it's 131 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 131 years. And we hope it continues.
Well, you've had it for a good portion of that time. For about a third or so.
I started with Stockboy in 1953.
What would you be able to describe some of your earliest memories of White Lake? Maybe as a child or a teenager?
Earliest memories were, it was always fun. Probably going fishing with my dad, and then boating, and just enjoy. And moved back to Whitehall and lived in 3 different homes in Whitehall with my parents. Went to Fair State, got my BS in pharmacy. Came back, bought Pitkin Drugstore, 1959, 1960. Been there ever since. And married in 62. Now I'll let my wife tell where she's from.
Well, I was born in Alabama and lived in a couple of places. My father was a minister, so we traveled around. And lived a couple of places in Pennsylvania. And then Dad says we're going to be... And we'd traveled to California, and we'd traveled to Minnesota. So we knew a lot of the states. We went that Route 66, you know. And when he said we're going to move to Michigan, I'm going, where is Michigan? Because we had never traveled through Michigan. And when we came up here, he showed us Duck. No, we met at the Montague Carnival on Welsh Road. Well, that's when we started chatting with each other.
Oh, it sounds like a long love affair. What?
Yeah, it was. 6 years.
Can you talk just a little bit about owning one of the area's most historical businesses? What would you like to say about that?
Well, we've seen a lot of change, and we've made a lot of changes. And it's always for the betterment of, we felt, the community. And I'm sure they felt the same way when we made improvements. Tried to expand and handle the needs of the community. It's a lot different back when we started than it is now, obviously. I don't get calls at 3 in the morning to go get medication anymore.